Hello, I'm the Dark Master, and welcome back to Mississippi Talks. So last time, I defended a controversial Mississippian, being the Mississippi Mayor Hal Manx, and it would appear I have to do that again, as the continual drive of Antifa BLM lynch mobs is back at it. Let's start with an introduction to the issue, the broader context, and then go on to the whole reaction. The election commissioner of James County, Gail Welch, made a statement on Facebook that was allegedly some racial undertones. Let me read it, then explain what she meant, the context, and the reaction. Because let's just say the reaction was very overblown and a bunch of malarkey. I'm concerned about voter registration in Mississippi. The blacks are having a lot of events for voter registration. People in Mississippi have to get involved too. Thank you for all you do. Now this seems like a rather innocent post, just asking for higher registration of all Mississippians, regardless of race. And it was part of a conversation on how over the last 20 years people have been decreasing in voter turnout, especially the past few years. Let's read another quote of hers with regard to that conversation. I'm just trying to get everyone involved in registering to vote. If everybody were as passionate as the black community were about registering people, that would be great.
Whole conversation was misinterpreted. My idea on that is the fact that over the last few years, the lack of people voting has been a real concern for me.
Commissioner Welch responds saying that's not her character and she supports all voters.
Over the last few years, the lack of people voting has been a real concern for me. I'm very passionate about people registering to vote, and that means everybody. I'm not coming down on anybody because everybody has the right to vote.
Let's read one last amazing quote. The thing that I want people to understand is I am here for everybody, and I do not discriminate against anybody. I don't know who is. I am going to do my job, and that has nothing to do with nothing else. So, as we can all clearly see, that the tweet was about increasing voter turnout and had no racial undertone whatsoever. Of course, opportunistics and hacktivists on all levels jumped in, both to get virtue signal points, as well as to once again shame Mississippi. Unlike last time, let's start with in-state before going out-of-state, because we really only have one in-state statement, and that's by Senator here. And honestly, this guy's a freaking disgrace. Who would vote this hack in? Seriously, I mean, fundamentally speaking, what she said was not racist, but then again, you are a black senator, so you have to appeal to the blacks. So, you get paid to believe in racism. So, you're not exactly unbiased. Now, let us go out of state. Now, thankfully, there only appear to be 3 videos on the subject at the time of recording. One by Fox News, which, being pretty much a right-wing version of CNN, I'm really only going to use as background visuals, and I'm not really going to address it, because they're pretty much just an inferior version of the context I already gave you. It's literally just like text to voice, so, it's not worth really commenting on. Oh, but there was a trio of independent responses, one by David Pakman, and let's start there with the arcade wannabe.
So let's talk about just a crazy story out of Mississippi. A Mississippi election commissioner was caught on Facebook, I don't know if that's even the right word, posting on Facebook that the blacks are registering to vote and that Mississippians need to do something about it, sort of
No,
implying that
she
the
did not
blacks in
say
Mississippi aren't
Mississippians.
really the Mississippians. Obviously, this
You
woman who did this is white.
freaking
Now, for
hack.
context,
She said
Mississippi
people
is
in
a state
Mississippi,
in trouble.
which is
If you
inclusive,
look at
by the way.
American
So,
states ranked
here,
by Human
as you can clearly
Development
see,
Index, which
David
the
is
sort
doing
of
what is called a form of linguistic propaganda by leaving that point out. Because it fits his narrative, He's trying to make it look like she is dehumanizing blacks, when that's not really the case at all. She's just saying that blacks are really the only group of people who are having voter registration events, which is kind of weird. Anyway, then he goes off on a bit on like a tangent about how Mississippi is like the last in most rankings, which I mean, when the blue states pretty much commit brain drain, steal all the talent of a lot of red states, is this really our fault? I mean, seriously, like, I am so sick of this gosh darn lie agreed upon when people say like, oh, the blue states subsidize the red states. Well, that is technically true because you steal all the talent from the red states. Like, California alone has like a near monopoly on the freaking tech industry, as well as like Silicon Valley. It's just, if Silicon Valley was in a red state, the red states would obviously subsidize the blue states because, assuming they had the same attitude, they would have brain drained all the blue states. It's really not about blue states being better than red states. It's just that they happen to take advantage of it quicker. Really, this is a problem of monopolies, not so much states being red or blue. As this isn't really relevant, I'm going to move on now. But anyway, let's continue.
Mississippi is a place with some serious problems. Black folks make up a large percentage of the Mississippi population, and good for them. They're registering to vote. They're holding voter registration drives. They plan to vote so that they can help their state improve. In other words, you don't vote to ruin your state. You vote to improve your state by having a say in what it is that, who is going to lead you and what it is that they're going to do.
What a naive position. Firstly, voters can vote in bad politicians. They also can, vote against their common interest. So, it's really not so much that more people voting makes things better. It's just that how people vote. It's not like if I have 1,000 people and then suddenly I add 10,000 more. If they all vote for Donald Trump, does it really matter? Or something what I mean? Just because you have a larger sampling size / larger voting population doesn't mean the outcomes are going to inherently be better. That's absurd. I mean, I do have faith in humanity. I assume you do too, but let's be frank, that's not how it works. Just because you have more voters doesn't mean that voters act smarter. Also, David Pakman shows this tweet of an alleged family member, which how is that relevant? That just seems like sharing something that's personal. Also, we don't even know that this is a confirmed family member. I mean, I can just say that I'm related to someone and I don't have to prove it, like Pocahontas or something. And also, since he's going on a family-related tangent, let me bring this up. A lot of people complain about the big old racist uncle that's bad. But honestly, as a person who's been to family meetings, and it's really the freaking progressive nephews that are always starting stuff. They'll be having a nice conversation and this person will be like, ugh, you're a terrible racist uncle. And it's he won't even have said anything that's actually racist. He'll just want to start stuff. So really, I mean, yeah. Pakman then reads out Gail Welch's explanation, which I already discussed. But he does say this, which is kind of interesting.
He said, quote, I don't mean anything by it. I've worked hard to make sure everybody is registered to vote, black or white, everybody. That's just how I am. Now, in my experience, most people who refer to the blacks doing something do mean something by it that is racially tinged, if not straight up racist.
Well, that's a personal anecdote, and it can just be dismissed as such. Let me share my experience as a counterexample. For my experience, blacks call themselves black. To use the word black is not inherently racist. I mean, like, is this song racist? Because as you know the song goes, I'm black man, I'm black man, I'm blickety blickety blickety. Like, there is nothing racist about calling someone who has black skin black. I'm sorry, is the very idea of recognizing physical differences racist? Like that's absurd. I would never call you racist for calling me the white.
And also, when she says the blacks are having lots of events to register voters, people in Mississippi have to get involved too, it is obviously implying that she sees black Mississippians as not really the people of Mississippi. It's the white people in Mississippi that are really the people of Mississippi. Now, her other...
My gosh, that is reading into a tweet way more. Now, to be fair, Pakman here is not the only one to do that. There's these other two race baiters. But seriously, if you assume someone is bad and then you interpret something as being bad, that kind of paints your interpretation, don't you believe? I mean, I didn't think it was racist. I mean, here's the thing. Went into this message completely neutral. I didn't think it was racist. I didn't think it was not racist. I mean, like, you know what I mean? Like, I looked at it in a neutral perspective at first.
Other excuse, and this is crazy because it's not an excuse. Her other excuse was the message was meant to be sent as a private message on Facebook. It wasn't meant to be public. I hate to break it to you. All that means is you had the sense to realize it shouldn't be public. It should be private in order to avoid more scrutiny. But it doesn't make it any less racist or any more outrageous.
Nice framing. It is an excuse she used as an explanation. She never called it an excuse. She called it an explanation. So you're trying to make it seem like she's covering up. Like she's making an excuse. Also, didn't you defend Clinton's emails with the same argument? Like, oh, Hillary's emails are private, so, you can't criticize her for it. Or at least she thought they were private. And, like, you partisan hack. Personally, I think she didn't do anything wrong, but let's say she did. Here is the best way to deal with an elected official. Let her serve out her elected term, then, when she's up for re-election, find some Democratic replacement. Hey, you can even make it a black person if it makes you feel better. Personally, I think the most talented person should get it, but you're a progressive. You want people in that aren't the best. You just want them to be, like, a diversity, basically. So, like, I mean, that's the most honest way to do it. You shouldn't overturn Jones County's will. Like, the people chose to vote this person in. I highly doubt this is the first problematic, in heavy quotation marks, incident. So yeah, let her serve out her term, then elect her out. Very easy. David Pakman only has really one last point I would like to address, and it's this, but it's not really relevant to the main video, so I'll be brief.
The right has this idea that calling someone racist is the worst thing you can do, and they've actually weaponized claims of racism against those who make the claims. You see this very frequently where they've almost made it taboo. They've tried to make it taboo to claim to see racism, and they very often say that seeing racism is the racism, or seeing racism is, quote, playing the race card.
Well, guess what, Pakman? The reason the right can weaponize it is because you have so abused the term. The term racist has lost... this amazes me about the left. They think everything that ails them is the right-wing's fault. Dude, the reason why the right can play the victim is not because the right has delegitimized racism. It's because the left, for some inane reason that I will never understand, thought it would be a good idea to call anyone who does, just mildly critical of someone who's not white racist. Like, you call everyone you don't like a fascist, everyone you don't like racist, and you're not going to gaslight me into saying otherwise. That has always been the case, at least since I've been alive, and it's just, like, absurd. You made this monster. Deal with it. The next response was from a much smaller channel, Political Perspective, a small progressive YouTuber with around 290 subscribers, 282 to be exact. He makes a lot of the same points Pakman does, so I'll be brief and kind of only use points that are slightly different, and because honestly, these two cover a lot of the same ground, and if you're curious as to why I don't respond to them in full, like my last video, it's because I found that video was slightly repetitive, but I figured I can respond to some points.
To get involved too. Thank you for all you do. Okay, so there's a couple of issues here. One, and maybe she's just not great at grammar, but if you read it closely, she's actually made a distinction between, already racist language, the blacks, right? So you've got the blacks versus people in Mississippi have to get involved too. So somehow there's a difference between the blacks and the people in Mississippi.
Those are two separate sentences. Of course they have separate subjects. Do you not know how English works? You have one sentence that uses the blacks as the subject, and a second subject that uses a different subject. That's how English works. But I will agree her wording is really bad. But when it comes to the distinguishing between blacks and Mississippians, look, I think you're really reading into this. But I will say something. There were, especially when Hal Manx was criticized, a lot of people came from out of state to start stuff. Black Panthers, Black Hebrew Israelites, those people are not Mississippians. If you don't live in Mississippi, but you drive there to start stuff, you're not Mississippian. I mean, I really don't think Antifa members and these people are high-functioning humans, but yeah, if you don't live in Mississippi, you're not from Mississippi. But again, it has nothing to do with being black. This is just a nothing. You're reading way too much into this. It's more along, I'm going to give an example. Let's say you have 4 ethnic groups. This is a hypothetical. Blacks, Asians, whites, and Native Americans. Of these, they all initially have about the same low voting turnout. Black people organized, it may be an outside group, maybe an inside group, whatever. They're the only ones to get energized to voting. Because of that, they may exert excessive political power because the other 3 groups are not as energized. For that reason, when you want to encourage voter registration increasing, you got to do that with all the groups. Otherwise, you're not really improving things. You're just overrepresenting a minority.
One of her defenses was, well, it was supposed to be private, which to me, much worse. What were you trying to accomplish if you were trying to send this message?
You mean like Hillary Clinton? I mean, you defended her the same way, man. And I'm not someone who obsesses over Hillary Clinton. I really don't think about her except when it's relevant. Just here, I don't know what it is. Anyway, I hope you really listened to my ethnic model that I shared earlier, because that really explains what's going on here.
Privately. At least if you intentionally sent it out publicly, then my interpretation is going to go, oh, you're just so ignorant of your own racism, you don't even get what a problem this is. But if it's being sent privately, what was the purpose of the private message? Right? To let the word out that, hey, black people are starting to register, we better get the white voter registration up too?
Firstly, she never said white. You liar. It's right on your screen. No use of the word right is there. Look at it. It says people Mississippi. It doesn't say white people Mississippi. Seriously. I mean, at least Pakman says that she only distinguishes between, or claims she distinguishes between black people and the people of Mississippi. No, you're making it black and white. You're aware that there are Hispanics and Asians, Native Americans too, right? There's way more to it. The world's not just black or white. Black people are not the only thing, right? I mean, seriously, increasing the voting rate of all ethnicities is the goal. You should never focus on just one.
And now she's coming out and saying, well, I just want everyone to be able to vote. Well, then what's the, like, explain to me, what is the point of this message? The way I interpret it, the whole point of the entire message is the registered black vote is getting too large. There's going to be too many black votes. That has to be countered. Someone has to do something about it.
Well, you're a lefty, so your interpretation is kind of biased, honestly. Like, it's not even evil if people sign up to vote. I mean, like what the fuck is this? It's not some, like, white supremacist talking point to want to get white people to vote. If you think that, you're kind of going insane. And I really can't say much about that.
Right? And then she tries to cover it up and says, well, I just want everyone voting. Well, then why are black people ever mentioned in the message at all? What was the reason of mentioning black people if it wasn't to try to cause fear and raise some kind of an alarm?
Because they're having an overabundance of voter registration events to raise voter turnout over other groups. I've explained this to you before, but let me repeat myself very simply. Let's say you have 4 groups. One group has like 20 voter registration events. The others only have like, I don't know, 1, if any at all. They might not have any. Of course, that one group is going to have overrepresentation because outside groups, or internal ones, it could be internal ones too, they decide to overstimulate that one group. That's the point. You have to raise the rate of voter registration in all groups. Otherwise, you're not really being representative of the overall population. Okay, so like the last video we'll be responding to is a segment on the Drunken Peasants podcast, episode 748, where we have 2 intelligent black members known as Hannibal and Monte. Someone, finally, who is black. We can finally get a black person's opinion on this and not some white person. Before we begin, I'd just like to make it clear that The Root is a black nationalist website. Like, it's kind of like using Breitbart as a source. I didn't mention this when David Pakman used it because I didn't think... He didn't really, like, show it on screen as much. But, seeing as how these people did... and I do kind of have a bone to pick with the Drunken Peasants podcast, I'd just like to point it out now that they're literally using a black nationalist website. So, like, well, we're off to a terrible start. I mean, it's just, they start out with this. Anyway, let's listen to this clip.
Everything but my mouth.
Was not COVID approved.
Right.
Mississippi election commissioner complains that blacks are registering to vote. Well, God damn it, take their rights away. You've done it in so many other aspects. Why not voting too?
Okay, Billy the Boy. What rights do black people not have in Mississippi? Can you tell me? Can you tell me what rights they do not have currently? They all have rights, if I'm not mistaken. And, in fact, in some matters, they have more rights, thanks to affirmative action. Now, I'm not against affirmative action inherently, but I would like to state for the record that this argument that black people are just extremely oppressed in Mississippi, you cannot substantiate that. What rights do black people not have in 2020? Even 2000, from 2000 onwards, really.
Are having lots of events for voter registration.
Christ.
People in Mississippi have to get involved to thank you.
Fur.
No,
All you do.
no.
Okay, Mr. Hannibal. You are aware that putting an A after I am is actually very common. Let me give you a sentence example since you need English help. I am a YouTuber. I am a Mississippian. Putting A after I'm is not grammatically incorrect. This isn't like Ebonics or something. Secondly, I know you wouldn't have the freaking balls to make fun of Ebonics, but like if you think about it, Ebonics is really just a southern accent, but done even worse. Like I've always found it funny that the same people who think that like Ebonics should be respected make fun of like the southern accent as if, because honestly both of them, if you really think about it, do sound unintelligent. But I think any accent should be able to be made fun of. I just think it's kind of weird. I mean, like also, like you say, you get angry at that too, which is kind of weird.
Troll account. This isn't.
Yeah,
this
that's
isn't
not
for
real.
real.
This can't
that's not
be
real.
real, except the fact that it's from Mississippi.
It is from Mississippi.
Gotta be real
but no,
because
that's-
it's from Mississippi. There are
Hey Billy the SJW, weren't you born in some crack house north of the Mason-Dixon line, dude? I wouldn't exactly judge other people's home states if I were you. I mean, like, let's just say your home state ain't perfect either. What was it? Like, wasn't there like some black Hebrew Israelite that shot up a church in that area? You know, like you're not exactly brimming with racial tolerance.
done for a post to seem racist. I hate when my posts seem racist. From the Clarion Ledger.
Bitch, when they're racist, it's gonna seem racist.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Hannibal, you're primed to see racism even when it's not there. I mean, like, do you remember the whole orcs or black people incident? Which is absurd because to think that creatures like orcs are black people, you kind of already have to think that black people are subhuman monsters. I mean, like, it's like absurd to think that. But, like, yeah, I mean, like, man, you just gotta chill out, man. Smoke some weed, calm down, man. You just gotta stay calm, man. Not everything's about race, bro.
Like a match under people and get them to vote.
No.
To get everybody to vote, she said.
Oh, so who specifically would get a fire lit under them by knowing that there's a lot of blacks registering?
Yeah.
Like,
You see, the little lie Ben planted here, he's employing it to indicate that apparently only racist whites care about voting. I mean, the perspective guy also said this, but really, do you really think that only racist white people care about white people voting? I mean, certainly we should care about everyone voting, right? I'm pretty sure Ben cares about his family voting. Ben, since you care about your family voting, does that mean you're racist because your family's white? Just curious.
yeah.
And who has... But, Ben, to defend her, this is Mississippi, and the whites do have a history of lighting matches underneath black people.
Okay, Billy the Midge, Mr. White Guilt, let me tell you something, you fat weasel. The KKK hasn't been culturally relevant since the late 1960s. Secondly, if you're black in Mississippi, this from experience by the way, chances are you're gonna get killed by some other black guy. I've lost tons of friends by other black people. But that's not me blaming black people, just so we're clear. So you can toss that boogeyman of the Democratic Party's Ku Klux Klan out. Because it's not relevant, and you know that. Especially, do you think it's any coincidence that Billy the Fridge here brings up the KKK with regards to a news story about a controversial white Mississippian? It's the cane that they always beat people with. Especially when they're of the, political position Billy is.
Despite all of one Mississippi lawmaker coming out against Welch's comments, as of today, she still holds a position of electoral oversight in a county made up of almost 30% black residents, and in an election year when racial equity will definitely be on the ballot. I wonder which way she'd like the vote to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with the ending quote of a black nationalist website. That's really brave. Okay, that's it. So what do I have to say? Well, once again, Billy the SJW strikes back, spreading a Mississippi falsehood. I'm not surprised, as he does indeed have the Antifa mind rot, and he's never been that smart, especially being friends with Onision. Honestly, the two black dudes, as much as I did criticize them earlier, they're actually a lot more reasonable. Like, I've seen pretty much every episode they're in. They always seem nice, they always seem kind. Yeah, I disagree with them on some things. Like, for example, Uncle Ben's Rice, which is named after the company's founder who was black. So, it's not really a racial caricature if it's a real person. But honestly, while I did criticize them a little, I want you to know that they're overall really intelligent. They're the best person I've ever responded to, from what I can tell. Definitely better than, like, David Pakman or Billy the Fridge or even that third guy that I don't even want to say his name again because he's so weird. So what are my final thoughts? Well, I do believe Gail Harrison Welch's post was poorly worded and easily misinterpreted by people who were either genuinely annoyed or angry at it, and people who were just opportunists, which, let's be fair, there were quite a few of those. Anyway, I'm the Dark Master, and join me next time when we do another Mississippi Talks, but it probably is going to be a lot more positive, though unfortunately, because positive videos tend to be shorter, it will definitely be shorter. So, anyway, cheers. Have a nice day.